My business partner, who I viewed as a mentor and father figure, used a loophole in our contract to steal the company I built from the ground up and left me with nothing. So I started a new company, took every single one of his clients, all of his best employees, and drove his business into bankruptcy. My world was a 2,000 square foot office space that smelled of hot electronics and stale coffee. It was my cathedral. For 6 years, I had poured my life into building a successful boutique marketing firm. I was the first one in every morning and the last one out, fueled by a passion for creating beautiful, effective campaigns for our clients. My life's work was everything to me. I had skipped vacations, postponed dates, and invested every ounce of my energy and savings into this dream. The stakes weren't just about my career or financial security. They were about my identity. I wasn't just an employee, I was a builder, and this company was my creation. The company had 2 names on the door. Mine and his, Richard. Richard was 20 years my senior, a man with a silver mane of hair and a handshake that felt like a promise. When I was just a talented but naive kid, he took me under his wing. He was my mentor. He handled the big picture stuff, golf course meetings, long lunches with potential investors, while I handled the actual work, the late-night design sessions, the client calls, the campaign launches. He was the face of the company, and I was its engine. I looked up to him. I thought of him as a second father. I didn't realize that while I was building a business, he was building a cage. The betrayal happened on a Tuesday. Richard called me into the boardroom, a room I had designed and furnished. He had a lawyer with him. As you know, Richard began, his voice devoid of its usual warmth, the 5-year vesting period of our initial partnership agreement concluded last month. I nodded, confused. Right. So now we renegotiate my equity stake, like we talked about. Richard slid a document across the polished table. It wasn't a new offer. It was a termination notice. That won't be necessary, he said, a flicker of something cold in his eyes. Per Section 11B of the agreement, I am exercising my option as the majority partner to dissolve the current partnership and restructure. Your position is being eliminated. My blood ran cold. The air left my lungs. Section 11B? I vaguely remembered signing the contract 5 years ago. A naive kid so excited to be a partner that I'd barely glanced at the boilerplate. He had planned this. He had waited 5 years for this exact moment, letting me build the company, cultivate the clients, and train the staff. Also, he could cut me out and keep everything for himself. The man I saw as a father figure was nothing more than a predator who had been fattening me up for the slaughter. The feeling of betrayal was so absolute, so profound, it was like a physical blow. I felt stupid. I felt used. And I felt a rage building inside me, a cold, quiet fire. I don't remember the drive home. I remember standing in my kitchen, the termination letter crumpled in my fist, trying to explain to my wife how our life savings and my entire career had vanished in a 10-minute meeting. The fear was paralyzing. We had a mortgage. We had bills. For 2 weeks, I was a ghost. I'd sit on the couch, staring at the wall, the same question echoing in my mind. How could I have been so blind? My first move wasn't driven by revenge, but by desperation. I started applying for other jobs. But every interview felt like a step down. No other company could offer me the creative control and ownership I'd had. Then one night, staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., the despair finally burned away, leaving something hard and sharp in its place. I got out of bed, went to my home office, and opened my old client files. I didn't want a new job. I wanted my old one. I wanted my company back. My first strike was creating a new spreadsheet. The title was simple: Client List. It didn't take long for word to get back to Richard that I was making calls. His reaction was swift and brutal. I received a cease and desist letter from his high-priced law firm, citing a non-compete clause in my termination agreement and threatening legal action if I contacted his clients. But he didn't stop there. He started a smear campaign. He told our shared clients that I'd had a breakdown, that I'd been fired for incompetence, that my work had become unreliable. He wasn't just trying to protect his business. He was trying to salt the earth of my entire professional reputation, so nothing could ever grow again. Suddenly, I was facing a legal battle I couldn't afford. The non-compete clause was vague, but intimidating. The legal letters were filled with threats and jargon designed to scare me into submission. I spent my days and nights poring over my old contracts, feeling the walls of the legal system closing in on me. This is how they crush the little guy, I realized. They don't have to beat you in court. They just have to bankrupt you with the process. The office manager at my old firm, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Maria, had been with us from the beginning. She knew who did the real work. She saw Richard trying to run the company on his own, and knew he was drowning. She started calling me secretly. He just lost the presentation file for the Henderson account, she'd whisper into the phone. He's asking me how to export a PDF. She was my spy, feeding me critical intelligence about Richard's incompetence and the growing dissatisfaction among the clients. I found a young, hungry lawyer I'll call Ben. I could only afford him for an initial consultation. I laid out my case, expecting the worst. Ben read the non-compete clause, and a slow grin spread across his face. "This is junk," he said, tossing it back on the desk. "It's overly broad and unenforceable in this state. He's bluffing. This is a scare tactic." Ben was so offended by the predatory nature of the contract that he agreed to represent me for a fraction of his usual fee. "I hate bullies," he said. "Let's gut him." My first client. I made a nervous call to the marketing director of a mid-sized tech company, our third largest account. I explained I was starting my own firm. Before I could even finish my pitch, she cut me off. Honestly, we never really dealt with Richard, she said. We dealt with you. You're the one who understands our brand. Send me the paperwork. Wherever you go, we go. I almost cried with relief. That one vote of confidence was everything. Despite the small victory, the first few months were brutal. I was burning through my savings to cover startup costs. I was working out of my spare bedroom. One rainy afternoon, a client I had been counting on, one of our oldest, called to politely decline my offer. We've decided to stick with Richard for now, he said. It's just less risky. I hung up the phone and felt a crushing wave of defeat. I looked at the mountain of bills on my desk. Maybe Richard was right. Maybe I was just a worker bee, not a queen. Maybe I should just give up and find a safe corporate job. The battleground wasn't a boardroom. It was the open market. My new company officially launched. My website went live. It was a declaration of war. My first 3 clients were small, but they were mine. It was a start. The turning point, the nuke, came from my spy, Maria. She called me one Friday afternoon, her voice a tense whisper. You are not going to believe this, she said. Richard was supposed to deliver the final creative for the Sterling Group campaign today. It's their biggest campaign of the year. He couldn't figure out the design software, tried to do it himself, and sent them the wrong file formats. He sent them low-res, watermarked proofs. The Sterling Group was our whale. They were our largest, most prestigious client, accounting for nearly 40% of the company's annual revenue. They're furious, Maria continued. They've been calling all day. Richard isn't answering his phone. The secret weapon wasn't something I had. It was Richard's own colossal incompetence. He was a king with no idea how to rule his kingdom. My heart hammered in my chest. This was the moment. My hands were shaking, but I picked up the phone and dialed the head of marketing at the Sterling Group. Hi, John, I said, my voice as calm as I could make it. It's David. I heard you might be having some technical difficulties. I still have all the original, high-resolution files for your campaign on my server. I could have them in your inbox in the next 5 minutes, no charge. There was a moment of stunned silence, followed by a huge sigh of relief. David, he said, you might have just saved my job. I had them. I landed the whale. That single act started a domino effect. The following Monday, with the news that the Sterling Group had officially moved their account to my new firm, my phone began to ring. One by one, the clients Richard had tried to lock down came flooding over to me. Richard, now in a full-blown panic, tried to fight back. He started slashing prices, offering absurd, unsustainable discounts to try and stop the bleeding. But it was too late. His reputation was shot. He had proven himself to be incompetent. His cheap offers just reeked of desperation. The true climax wasn't a confrontation with Richard, but a series of arrivals. 2 weeks after I landed the Sterling account, Maria walked into my home office. I quit, she said with a huge smile. So, where do you want me to set up my desk? She was the first. The lead graphic designer followed a week later. Then the top web developer. They had all stayed out of loyalty to me, and now they were coming home. The final confrontation was a single, pathetic voicemail from Richard. His voice was hoarse, a mixture of begging and threats. He offered me my old job back, at a higher salary. I listened to the message, and then I deleted it without a second thought. The company hadn't been stolen. It had simply migrated to its real leader. The true justice was that I didn't have to destroy him. He had simply crumbled under the weight of his own inadequacy. 6 months later, my lawyer, Ben, called me. Just thought you'd like to know, he said, a smile in his voice. Richard's firm officially filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy this morning. They're liquidating everything. My new firm, now with a proper office and a full staff of my old, loyal employees, had a celebratory lunch that day. The story became a quiet legend in our local business community. Richard wasn't seen as a shark, he was seen as a fool. A cautionary tale about how greed and arrogance are unsustainable business models. My reputation, on the other hand, was solidified. I was the guy who had been betrayed, and had not only survived but built something better. It's been 3 years. I'm standing in the doorway of our new office, a space 3 times the size of the old one. My team is laughing, collaborating, creating amazing work. We're more profitable, more creative, and have a better company culture than I ever could have dreamed of. My wife and I just got back from a 2-week vacation, the first real one I've taken in a decade. In a strange way, Richard's betrayal was the best thing that ever happened to me. He tried to push me out of my own creation, but all he really did was force me to build a bigger, better, and more beautiful kingdom right next door. And this time it's all mine.